The woman on the stand had been crying for 6 minutes. I counted because that is what I do. I sit behind a stenotype machine in courtroom 3 of the Guilford County Superior Court, and I record what people say when their lives are coming apart. My fingers move across the keys the way they have moved 5 days a week for 7 years, catching every syllable, every false start, every pause where a breath replaces a word that will not come. She was asking the judge to let her keep her children. "Please," she said, and the word broke in half somewhere between her throat and the microphone. I typed it exactly as it came out. One syllable, fractured. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. My coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago, and the paper cup had a ring of brown at the waterline that looked like a tide mark. The bailiff shifted his weight from his left foot to his right. The judge wrote something. The woman kept talking, and I kept recording, because my job is to capture what was said. Not what anyone wished they had said. Not what anyone will claim later that they meant. What was said. The hearing ended at 4:17. I packed my machine into its case, zipped my transcript drive into the pocket, and walked through the metal detectors on the first floor. My badge beeped. The security guard nodded the way he nods every afternoon, half a second of eye contact, and then nothing. My phone buzzed in the parking deck. Unknown number, Greensboro area code. I let it go to voicemail and put the phone on the passenger seat. Started the engine. Pulled out of the space. Then, at the exit gate, while the arm lifted, I pressed play. 20 years of silence. And then my mother's voice. "Morgan, honey. It's your mother. I know it's been a while." A pause, as if she were checking a script. "Listen. My husband Scott is throwing a big party for the business. 30th anniversary. 200 people coming. And I've been telling everyone about you and your little boy for years now, and they're all dying to meet him. I want to make this right between us. I'll send you $250,000. Just come to the party with your son. That's all I'm asking. Call me back, sweetie." I sat in my car at the exit gate. The arm was still up. A truck behind me honked once, then twice. I pulled forward into traffic and merged onto Gate City Boulevard, and at the first red light I played the message again. "Your little boy." I paused it, rewound, played just that part again. "Your little boy." My thumb hovered over the screen for a long time before I let the whole message run. "I want to make this right between us." Then, $250,000. Then, "That's all I'm asking." The last time I heard Connie Pruitt's voice, I was standing on a porch at 11 at night with a backpack that held 2 shirts, a pair of jeans, underwear, and a stuffed rabbit with one ear missing. It was raining, not a storm, just a steady, warm September rain that soaked through my shirt in under a minute. She spoke through the screen door. She did not open it. "You did this to yourself," she said. And then the deadbolt turned and the porch light went off, and I stood there in the dark until headlights swung into the driveway, and a woman from the Department of Social Services got out of a county car with an umbrella and my case number. On a clipboard. I was 10 years old, and I had done nothing to myself. Someone else did it, and my mother chose him. I drove home. I pulled into my apartment complex off Elm Street, parked in my numbered space, climbed the stairs, and locked the door behind me. Under my bed there was a storage box. Inside the storage box there was a manila envelope I had not opened in 6 years. I did not open it that night either. I set my phone on the kitchen counter, screen down, and made dinner for one. Sleep would not come. At 11, I pulled the storage box out and sat on the floor with it between my knees. Inside the manila envelope, the file. I did not touch it. Next to the envelope, my GED certificate. The edges curling. A photo of Jim and Carla, my foster parents from 14 to 18, standing in front of their house on Merritt Drive with their arms around each other and the front door open behind them. My acceptance letter to the court reporting program at Guilford Tech, folded into thirds, and at the bottom, face down, a single ultrasound image from 2007. Grainy. Printed on thermal paper that had yellowed at the margins. 11 weeks. A shape like a comma in a dark field. The only proof that I had ever carried a child. I picked up my phone and opened the thread with A.T. 8 months of messages. The first one, from Alexis, had been cautious. Hi. I think we might be related. My name is Alexis Tate. I did a DNA test on 23 and me. I had stared at that message for 3 days before I responded. And then slowly, like two people inching across a frozen lake, we had built something. Photos. Questions. Small facts exchanged like currency. Alexis sent pictures of her parents in Raleigh, David at a science fair with safety goggles pushed up on his forehead, Carol holding a cake with 19 candles. I sent a photo of my apartment. Not much, but it's mine, I wrote. Alexis replied. It's yours. That's what matters. I typed. My mother called. She wants me to bring my son to a party. She doesn't know about you. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Alexis. I'm not a son. I stared at the screen. Typed back. No, you're not. Alexis. When do we meet? I set the phone down on the carpet next to the ultrasound image. The refrigerator compressor clicked on in the kitchen. My apartment was so quiet I could hear the electric hum through the wall. I looked at the manila envelope. The flap was still sealed with clear packing tape I had put there 6 years ago when I decided I was done opening it. Not yet. 4 days later, I was sitting in a diner on South Elm Street at 9:40 in the morning. 20 minutes before Alexis was supposed to arrive. I took a booth facing the door, ordered coffee. Did not drink it. The vinyl seat stuck to the backs of my arms in the June heat. And the bell above the door rang every time someone walked in, and I looked up every time, and it was never her, and then it was. She was my height. My dark hair, cut shorter, tucked behind her ears. She wore jeans and a white t-shirt and sneakers that looked like she had walked across campus in them for a year. She scanned the room the way people do when they are looking for someone they have only seen in photos. And when her eyes found me, she did not slow down or hesitate. She walked straight to the booth and sat across from me and put her hands flat on the table. You look like your texts, she said. Is that good or bad? It means you don't perform for people. She smiled. I like that. We talked. The first minutes were careful, full of ordinary questions that meant extraordinary things. She told me about David and Carol. David taught middle school science and kept a terrarium in the living room with a frog named Copernicus. Carol managed a dentist's office and had been the one to tell Alexis she was adopted. Sitting on the edge of her bed when Alexis was 5, explaining it the way you explain weather to a child, gently and without apology. They kept everything the adoption agency gave them, including a locket. Alexis touched her necklace. A small silver pendant on a thin chain. She unclasped it and held it out to me, and when I did not take it, she opened it herself. Inside was a Polaroid, smaller than a postage stamp, of a newborn in a hospital bassinet. The baby's eyes were closed. The fists were curled. On the tiny wrist, a plastic bracelet read, Baby Girl Sawyer. I could not speak. In the delivery room, I was 11 years old, and a nurse whose name I never learned held my hand, and someone on the other side of a curtain said girl, and then the room emptied, and I never saw the face. 19 years. 19 years, and here it was, smaller than my thumb, printed on a piece of instant film, and kept inside a silver locket by a woman I was only now meeting for the first time. Alexis watched me look at the photo. She did not rush me. She waited until I closed the locket and set it on the table between our coffee cups, and then she asked the question, Why did they throw you out? I told her the version I had rehearsed for 2 decades. The facts. In order. The way I would read them back in a courtroom if anyone ever asked. I was 10. My mother's boyfriend. I told my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Givens, because I did not know who else to tell. Child Protective Services came to the house. My mother said I was lying. She said I was a problem child who made things up for attention. CPS placed me in foster care. I never went home again. My voice stayed even, locked into the court reporter cadence I had spent 7 years perfecting. Subject, verb, object, and nothing else. I could have been reading back a transcript. Alexis listened with her hands folded on the table. She did not flinch, did not gasp, did not offer the kind of softened reaction people give when they want you to stop talking. When I finished, she sat quietly for a moment. Then, do they know I exist? They think I have a son, I said. My mother made that up years ago. She's been telling people at her church about a grandson she's never met. They never looked for me? No. Alexis closed the locket, opened it, looked at the Polaroid again, closed it. Then she lifted her chin and said, quiet and precise, the way you state something you have already decided. Let's go tell them. The bell above the door rang. Someone walked in. Bacon grease and bleach and sunlight on laminate tabletops, and my daughter sitting across from me with her hands folded and her jaw set, and her eyes, which were my eyes, steady and clear. She pulled out her phone and started looking up the drive from Charlotte to Greensboro for the party weekend. The debate was over. We were going. Alexis drove up from Charlotte the following Wednesday after her last class. She brought a canvas bag with 2 changes of clothes and a container of Carol's lemon squares wrapped in foil. We stood in the doorway of my apartment for a moment that lasted longer than it should have, because neither of us had figured out the mechanics of greeting yet. Handshake? Hug? Something else entirely? We settled on Alexis walking past me into the kitchen and setting the lemon squares on the counter as if she had done it 100. We cooked pasta that night. I had 1 pot and 1 colander and a cutting board that warped in the center. Alexis chopped garlic while I boiled water, and we moved around each other in that small kitchen, the way 2 people do when they are still learning each other's rhythms, all careful pivots and murmured sorries when a shoulder bumped an elbow. She told me about David's science classroom. He kept a terrarium on a shelf above the window with a frog named Copernicus, who ate crickets from a pair of blunt tweezers every Tuesday and Thursday. She told me about Carol's singing. Old hymns, mostly, the kind with 4-part harmonies, sung off-key in a kitchen while dishes dried in the rack. Carol had a voice like someone trying to tune a guitar by feel, Alexis said, and it was the most comforting sound in the world. I listened the way I listen in court. Face neutral. Hands still. Recording everything. But my eyes burned, and I had to turn toward the stove so she would not see. This was what her life had become, because I told my 5th-grade teacher. The adoption happened because CPS intervened, because a county car pulled into the driveway on a rainy September night and a woman with a clipboard took me away from a house where I was not safe, and 9 months later, a baby was born and given to David and Carol Tate in Raleigh, and that baby grew up in a home with a bookshelf shaped like a tree and a frog named Copernicus, and parents who told her the truth about where she came from when she was 5 years old. My truth, the one Connie tried to bury, had built this. Alexis noticed the apartment. She walked through the living room on her 2nd visit and stopped in front of the bookcase. Books, a single succulent on the windowsill, and nothing else. No photos, no prints, no throw pillows or candles or any of the things people collect when they are settling in. You live like you might have to leave fast, she said. I did not argue. That evening she pulled out her phone and opened her settings. Location sharing, she said. My mom and I do this. If I'm driving home late, she can see where I am. It's just a thing. She held her phone out to me, the request glowing on the screen. I had never shared my location with anyone. Sharing your location means someone can find you, and I had spent most of my life making sure the people who should have looked for me could not. But Alexis was not those people. I pressed accept. 10 days before the party, I called Connie back. I sat on the edge of my bed with the phone in my hand and the storage box at my feet. I dialed the number from the voicemail. She picked up on the 2nd ring, which meant she had been waiting. Morgan. A breath. Honey, I'm so glad you called. Her voice was warm, the way hotel lobbies are warm. Controlled temperature, no drafts, everything calibrated to make you feel like staying. She did not ask how I had been for 20 years. She did not ask where I lived or what I did for work or whether I was healthy or whether I had ever forgiven her. She moved straight to the terms. $250,000. Come to the party, Saturday the 28th. Bring the boy. Dress appropriately. The event was semi-formal, she said, and Scott had hired a photographer. And Morgan, honey? Let's not bring up the past. Nobody needs that. I said yes to everything. My voice stayed level, pitched the same way I pitch it when a judge asks me to read back a contested statement, neutral and precise, and giving nothing away. Wonderful, Connie said. I'll FedEx the check this afternoon. I hung up. Set the phone on the bedspread. Looked at my watch and counted the minutes that passed before I could unclench my jaw. 11. The FedEx envelope arrived 2 days later. I opened it, standing at the kitchen counter with my coffee going cold beside the sink. Inside, a cashier's check for $250,000, printed on heavy security paper with a holographic strip that caught the light when I tilted it toward the window. The check had no smell. Clean money, institutional money. Money that had been sitting in a business account waiting to be deployed. My annual salary at the courthouse was $41,000. This check was 6 years of my life, folded inside a cardboard mailer with Connie Pruitt's return address in the upper left corner. I set it on the counter. Then I pulled the storage box out from under the bed and took out the manila envelope. The packing tape I had sealed it with 6 years ago resisted for a moment, then gave way with a dry rip. Inside, the file. 11 pages, photocopied on state letterhead, stapled once in the upper left corner. The Guilford County Department of Social Services. I sat at the kitchen table and read it the way I read transcripts. Word by word. Line by line. Page 1. My statement. Taken September 15th, 2006. Transcribed by a social worker named Linda Farrow. He comes into my room after Mama goes to sleep. I told him to stop and he didn't stop. I told my teacher because I didn't know who else to tell. The 10-year-old version of me, speaking in sentences so short they barely filled a quarter of the page. Page 3. The teacher's report. Mrs. Givens. Student disclosed to me during morning recess that she was being touched by her mother's boyfriend in a manner consistent with sexual abuse. Student was calm and specific. Page 7. Connie's response, taken the following day. I read it twice, then a third time, because my hands were shaking and the words kept sliding. She's lying. She's always been a problem child, and she wants attention. Gary has never touched her inappropriately. I want her out of this house if she's going to make accusations like that. And then, at the bottom of page 9, a notation I had never seen before. In 6 years of keeping this file under my bed, in the 2 or 3 times I had opened it before sealing it with packing tape, I had never read past page 7. I had always stopped at Connie's words, because her words were the wall I ran into every time. Page 9. Criminal referral to Greensboro Police Department, September 22, 2006. Investigation status, declined. Caseworker notes. Mother refused to cooperate with investigation. Child removed from home and placed in foster care. Referral closed. Gary Pruitt was never charged. Not because I lied, not because the evidence was insufficient. Because Connie refused to cooperate, and without her cooperation the investigation collapsed, and a man who raped a 10-year-old girl went home and lived his life, and was never arrested and never charged. I closed the file and put it back in the manila envelope, picked up the cashier's check from the counter, and put both in my work bag. Then I drove to Caitlin's office. Caitlin Marsh kept a small practice on Spring Garden Street, 3 rooms above a print shop. She had been a foster kid herself. Aged out of the system at 18, put herself through law school at Campbell, on scholarships, and waitressing, and sheer will. We met through a foster care alumni event 3 years ago, and she had been the first person to tell me, gently and without false promise, that there were legal options I should consider while I still had time. I had not been ready then. The civil window for childhood sexual abuse in North Carolina closed when I turned 28, under the Safe Child Act. That was 2 years ago. The revival period that had temporarily reopened time-barred claims ended in 21. Caitlin had told me about both. I had let both pass. She read the criminal referral notation on page 9 and went very still. The civil road is closed, she said. I told you about it 3 years ago, and you weren't ready. And that's something you never need to apologize for. Trauma doesn't run on court deadlines. She set the file down on her desk, with both hands flat on it. But here's what I need you to hear. There is no statute of limitations for felony sexual abuse of a minor in North Carolina. None. If the Guilford County DA's office reopens this case with your testimony and this file, Gary Pruitt can be charged today, tomorrow, or 20 years from now. The clock on this one never started running, because it was never supposed to stop. I stared at the file on her desk. 11 pages. The weight of a few sheets of paper and the full weight of 20 years. What about Connie? Connie isn't the defendant. Gary is. But Connie's response in this file, on the record, shows she obstructed an investigation into the sexual abuse of her own child. That won't play well in front of a jury. And it won't play well in front of 200 people at a party either. I drove home with the CPS file and the cashier's check both in my work bag on the passenger seat. Alexis was texting me about what to wear to the party. She had sent a photo of 2 dresses on hangers with the caption left or right, and I typed back left without looking because my eyes were on the road and my mind was somewhere else entirely. I had a file, a check, a daughter, and a legal opening that had been there all along. For the first time in 20 years, the cards were in my hand. The feeling was enormous and unfamiliar, like standing up after years in a chair, and I mistook it for healing when it was only the beginning of something much harder. 6 days before the party, the 3 of us sat together in Caitlin's office for the first time. 3 chairs pulled into a half circle around the desk. Alexis had driven up from Charlotte that morning. She wore the locket. The plan was simple. Alexis and I would attend the party. There would be no grandson. I would bring my daughter, and I would bring the CPS file, and I would read Connie's own words to 200 people who had been told a lie for 20 years. Caitlin would have a criminal referral package ready for the Guilford County District Attorney's Office to be filed the Monday after the party. "I need you to understand something," Caitlin said. She was sitting on the edge of her desk with her arms crossed, and her voice had the careful weight it carried when she was about to say something a client might not want to hear. "This is not a courtroom. You will not have a judge controlling the room. You will not have rules of evidence or a bailiff or a transcript. You will have 200 people, most of whom have believed your mother's version of events for 2 decades. And you will have about 90 seconds before the situation becomes something you cannot predict or control. Once you start this, you cannot take it back." Alexis leaned forward in her chair. "She's not taking it back," she said. "She's giving it back." I looked at my daughter, 19 years old, sitting in a lawyer's office in Greensboro, wearing a locket with a Polaroid of a newborn she had never been told to mourn or miss because she had been loved from the first day of her life. She had no wound in this fight. She was here because she chose to be, and because the woman who gave birth to her at 11 had a truth that deserved witnesses. The plan was set. Caitlin would prepare the referral. Alexis would drive up Friday night. I would carry the file in my work bag, the same bag I carried to court every day, the bag where accurate records lived. 6 days. 4 days before the party, my phone rang while I was eating dinner. Pasta again. The same box of penne I had been working through all week, with jarred sauce and nothing else. Connie's number. I set down my fork, opened the voice recorder on my phone, and pressed the green button to accept the call. North Carolina is a one-party consent state. I was the one party. "Morgan, I need you to tell me the truth." The sweetness was thinner this time, stretched tight over something brittle. "Do you have a son or not?" "I'll be at the party," I said. "That's what you asked for. Don't play games with me. I have 200 people expecting to meet your boy. I've been telling them about him for years, Morgan. If you show up and embarrass us in front of the whole community, in front of Scott's business partners and the deacons and everybody who matters to this family, and you just walk in and embarrass you how?" A pause. I could hear her breathing. Then, quieter, the sweet register gone entirely. "You know what I mean. Say it. Nobody believed you 20 years ago, Morgan. Nobody is going to believe you now." The line went dead. She had hung up on me. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone still recording and the pasta getting cold and the fluorescent light above the stove buzzing the way it always buzzed. A low electrical hum I had stopped hearing months ago, but that now seemed to fill the entire apartment. My right hand, the one holding the phone, was steady. My eyes were not. I stopped the recording, saved it, Named the file with the date and time, the way I label court transcripts, because habits are the last thing to leave you when everything else starts to go. Nobody believed you 20 years ago. I replayed those words in my head for the next 48 hours, the way you replay a song you cannot stand, but cannot stop humming. They were there when I woke up. They were there when I brushed my teeth. They were there when I sat at the stenotype machine in courtroom 3 the next morning and recorded a property dispute between two brothers who had not spoken in 11 years. My fingers moving across the keys while Connie's voice looped underneath like a second track, playing at a frequency only I could hear. Nobody believed you. By the third day before the party, I could not go to work. I called the courthouse at 7:15 in the morning and told the clerk's office I had a stomach virus. First sick day in 4 years. Then I sat on the edge of my bed with the storage box at my feet and my laptop open on my knees and typed Gary Pruitt, Alamance County, North Carolina, into the search bar. He lived 45 minutes away. He worked at an auto body shop off Highway 70. His Facebook profile was public. The cover photo was a bass boat on a lake, green water and a cloudless sky, and his profile picture showed a man in his 50s with a sunburn and a ball cap holding up a fish with both hands. He was smiling in the photo. The fish was large. His page was full of this kind of thing. Cookout photos, NASCAR race weekends, a post about a church fish fry that had gotten 12 likes. He had a life, a normal, ordinary, uninterrupted life. The man who came into my room after my mother went to sleep had a Facebook profile with a fish and a smile. And he had never been arrested, never been charged, never been named in any public record except a CPS file that had been sealed and forgotten in a county archive for 20 years. My hands went cold. The chill started in my fingertips and moved up through my wrists and settled somewhere behind my sternum, and my breathing went shallow, and the apartment walls seemed to shift slightly inward the way they do when your body decides to panic before your mind catches up. I was 30 years old sitting on my bed in Greensboro, and I was also 10 years old standing on a porch in the rain, and the distance between those two versions of me collapsed to nothing. I closed the laptop, went to the kitchen, opened my work bag, and pulled out the cashier's check and set it flat on the counter next to the coffee maker. $250,000. I could deposit it tomorrow morning. I could be in another state by the weekend. A new apartment, a new city, a new job where my name and my mother's name and the name of the man with the fish on Facebook would mean nothing to anyone. I could disappear the way Connie had spent 20 years hoping I would disappear. My phone lit up on the counter. Alexis, 3 days. You okay? I did not respond. The next afternoon I got in my car and drove without choosing a destination, south on Elm, west on Wendover, past the mall and the car dealerships, and the strip of fast food restaurants where the road straightens out toward the airport. I ended up in a Walgreens parking lot because my vision blurred, and I pulled into the first space I could find and turned off the engine. The steering wheel was hot from sitting in the sun. The seatbelt warning chimed once, twice, a third time before giving up. Somewhere across the lot, a shopping cart rolled across the asphalt on its own, pushed by nothing I could see, making a slow metallic rattle that sounded like a drawer being opened very carefully. I was holding the cashier's check in my right hand and my phone in my left. I had taken the check off the counter on my way out of the apartment without thinking about why. I sat there for 40 minutes. I drafted 3 texts to Alexis and deleted all 3. I can't do this. Delete. I'm sorry for dragging you into this. Delete. You deserve better than a mother who falls apart in parking lots. Delete. Caitlin's voice circled through my head. Once you start this, you cannot take it back. Connie's voice underneath it. Nobody believed you. And underneath that, older and quieter. The sound of a screen door closing, and a deadbolt turning, and rain on a porch roof. I had spent 20 years building a life that looked exactly like not being hurt. Quiet job where I recorded other people's crises. Quiet apartment with no photos on the walls. Quiet evenings where the only sound was the refrigerator compressor clicking on and off. I had constructed a life so still and so controlled that nothing could reach me. And the cost of that stillness was that nothing could reach me. A knock on the window. I turned my head and Alexis was standing in the parking lot. She was wearing the same sneakers she had worn to the diner, the ones with the campus wear on the soles, and she was holding her car keys, and she was not smiling. She had driven up from Charlotte without being asked, without being told where I was, because I had accepted a location-sharing request on a Tuesday night in my kitchen, when she said my mom and I do this, as if it were nothing. She opened the passenger door and sat down and did not speak. A full minute passed. The shopping cart had stopped rolling. The sun was behind the Walgreens, and the parking lot was half in shadow. I was going to deposit the check and disappear, I said. Were you? I don't know. Can I see it? I handed her the check. She looked at it for a long time, turning it over, running her thumb across the holographic strip. Then, she folded it once and handed it back. $250,000, she said. That's what she thinks you're worth. That's what she thinks her secret is worth. Same thing. I put the check in my work bag, which was on the floor behind my seat. The CPS file was already in there. The two of them side by side in a canvas bag in a 12-year-old Honda Civic in a Walgreens parking lot. My hands were still cold, but they had stopped shaking, and I could see the dashboard clearly again, and my daughter was sitting in the passenger seat, with her seatbelt on, and her hands in her lap, looking back at me with an expression so steady it could have been borrowed from a courtroom sketch of someone who had already decided the verdict. That evening we sat on the floor of my apartment, with our backs against the bed, and the storage box open between us. The CPS file spread out on the carpet beside the ultrasound image, and the GED certificate, and the acceptance letter from Guilford Tech, and the photo of Jim and Carla. All the pieces of my life laid out on beige carpet in a one-bedroom apartment, like artifacts in a museum nobody had ever visited. I told Alexis everything, the real version, the one I had never given to anyone. I had told Caitlin the legal version, the facts in sequence, the kind of account that holds up in a deposition. I had told my foster parents the edited version, the broad strokes without the details that would have kept them awake at night. I had told a therapist at 22 a version that lasted 6 months before I stopped going, because she kept reaching for words that sounded like chapter headings in a textbook, and the gap between her language and my experience was so wide that I could not cross it. I told Alexis the version that smelled like motor oil and sounded like a lock that did not latch properly and tasted like the metallic edge of a bloody lip bitten to keep from screaming, the boyfriend who waited until my mother's bedroom light went off. The bedroom door that had a lock, but the lock was broken and nobody fixed it. The night I told Connie and the way her face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds. Surprise, anger, calculation, and then a smooth blankness that settled over her features like a window shade being pulled down. "You're lying," she said. Then the porch and the rain and the headlights swinging into the driveway and the county car. The foster home on the other side of Greensboro, where a kitchen drawer with a bent track caught my wrist and left a scar I still touched when I was nervous. The delivery room, the word girl, and then 19 years of silence. Alexis listened without moving. She sat with her back against the bed and her knees pulled up and her hands wrapped around her ankles, and she did not flinch or gasp or look away. When I finished, the apartment was quiet enough to hear the neighbor's television through the wall, a low murmur of canned laughter that sounded like it was coming from a different planet. "You keep saying you need her to believe you," Alexis said. "I do. You were 10. Her voice was calm in a way that was different from the calm I used in courtrooms. My calm was a wall. Hers was a clearing. You were 10 years old, and you walked into a school and told your teacher, a 10-year-old who believed herself enough to ask for help. You didn't wait for your mother's permission. You didn't wait for anyone to tell you it was okay. You just said it." She paused. The canned laughter next door stopped. Something else came on. Something quieter. "So why does the 30-year-old version of you need her mother's permission to be whole?" I looked down at the CPS file on the carpet. Page 1. Transcribed by a social worker named Linda Farrow in handwriting that slanted slightly to the right. "He comes into my room after Mama goes to sleep. I told my teacher because I didn't know who else to tell. That girl, The one who spoke those sentences in a county office 20 years ago was braver than I had been since. She needed someone to listen, and she found someone, and she said the words, and the words set everything in motion. The CPS car, and the foster home, and the delivery room, and the adoption. David and Carol in Raleigh, singing off-key hymns while the dishes dried. A bookshelf shaped like a tree, a locket with a Polaroid. A 19-year-old sitting on my floor who had been loved from day one because a 10-year-old girl walked into a school and told the truth. I was not going to that party to make Connie believe me. I had stopped needing that somewhere between the Walgreens parking lot and this carpet. I was going because 200 people had been told a lie for 20 years. And the woman who told it had built a life on top of it. And the truth had been sitting in a manila envelope under my bed the entire time, and it was tired of being stored. I put the pages back in order, slid them into the manila envelope, put the envelope in my work bag, next to the cashier's check, and zipped it shut. "What time do we leave Saturday?" Alexis asked. 8. She nodded once. Then she reached over and put the ultrasound image back in the storage box, carefully, face down the way she had found it. She closed the lid and slid the box back under the bed with her foot. 2 days. Saturday at 8 we left my apartment. Alexis had slept on the couch under a quilt Jim and Carla gave me when I aged out of foster care. She was dressed before I was. White blouse, dark jeans, and the locket. I wore a navy dress I had bought at TJ Maxx the afternoon before, still creased at the waist from the hanger, and shoes I had not worn since a courthouse holiday reception 2 years ago. My work bag was on the back seat with the manila envelope and the cashier's check inside, zipped shut the same way I had left it 2 nights ago on the apartment floor. We drove south on Interstate 85. The sun was low and orange through the windshield, and the shadows of the pine trees along the median stretched across all 4 lanes. Alexis had the passenger window cracked, and the warm air pulled at her hair and made the locket chain catch the light in small flashes. We passed the exit for Alamance County. "The green highway sign," said Burlington. 12 miles. I kept my eyes on the road. "How many people?" Alexis asked. 200. She turned that over for a moment, looking out the window at the thinning suburbs and the red clay shoulders of the highway. "That's a lot of chairs," she said. Something in my chest shifted, a pressure releasing, and I almost smiled. Almost. But we were 12 minutes from the house, and the pressure came back, and I drove. The house was larger than I expected. A 2-story colonial with white siding and dark shutters, and a wraparound porch with ferns hanging from hooks along the railing. The yard had been mowed that morning, the cut grass smell still rising in the heat. Cars lined both sides of the street for 3 blocks. In the backyard, visible through the open side gate, a white catering tent stretched over 200 chairs, arranged around circular tables with white tablecloths and mason jar centerpieces. String lights looped between the tent poles and the back porch. A banner hung across the fence. Pruitt Construction. 30 years of building. A bluegrass trio played near the tent entrance, banjo and fiddle and upright bass, and the smell of pulled pork and sweet tea drifted over the whole neighborhood like a fog you could taste. We walked through the front door. The living room was full. Men in khakis and sport coats, women in sundresses and cardigans, church people and business people and neighbors holding plates of food and glasses of iced tea. A few children ran through the hallway toward the backyard. The air conditioning was on too high, and after the heat outside, the cold was sharp against my bare arms. Connie spotted me from across the room. I saw her face go through 3 stages in under 2 seconds. Recognition, relief, and then a freeze that started at her eyes and moved down to her mouth. She was looking past me, scanning the space behind my shoulder for a boy who was not there. There was only Alexis, standing to my left with her hands at her sides and the locket resting against her collarbone. Connie crossed the room. Her smile was locked in place the way a painting is locked in a frame, held there by force rather than feeling. She wore a cream-colored dress and the same gold cross necklace she had worn when I was a child, and she smelled like vanilla lotion, and the smell hit me somewhere behind my ribs, the way a sound from childhood can hit you before you have time to prepare for it. "Morgan, you came." Her eyes moved to Alexis and back to me. I don't have a son, Connie. Her smile held. It held the way a bridge holds in the seconds before the cables snap. What? I never had a son. I had a daughter. I turned to Alexis. This is Alexis. She's 19. She's studying to be a teacher at UNC Charlotte. And she is your granddaughter. The room had not gone quiet yet. People were still talking at the edges, still laughing in the backyard, still loading plates at the buffet table under the tent. But the circle around us was expanding. Conversations within earshot trailed off. A woman in a floral dress took a step back. Scott walked over from the kitchen doorway with a paper plate in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. Connie, who's this? He said. Alexis reached up and unclasped the locket from her neck. She opened it and held it out. The Polaroid facing Connie. A newborn in a hospital bassinet. Eyes closed. Fists curled. The plastic bracelet on the tiny wrist. Baby girl Sawyer. Connie stared at the photo. Her hand went to her mouth. Sawyer. My name from before foster care changed it to a case number and then back again. The baby Connie had told 200 people was a boy because she had never looked, never searched, never called, and had been building a fiction out of silence for 2 decades. Morgan, this is not the place, Connie said. Her voice dropped to the register she used to make everyone believe she was being reasonable. Let's go inside and talk about this privately. Just the two of us. I opened my work bag, pulled out the manila envelope. The packing tape was already torn from 2 nights ago. I slid out the file and turned to page 7. I read aloud, the same voice I used in courtroom 3 when a judge asked me to read back testimony. Flat, clear, and precise. But I did not read my own statement. I read Connie's. Guilford County Department of Social Services. Statement of Parent, Connie Bellamy. Taken September 16, 2006. I paused long enough for the room to go still. She's lying. She's always been a problem child. And she wants attention. Gary has never touched her inappropriately. I want her out of this house if she's going to make accusations like that. 200 people were listening. The bluegrass trio had stopped mid-song, the fiddle bow frozen above the strings. Scott's paper plate was on the floor, the pulled pork fanning out across the hardwood in a slow arc. A woman near the kitchen doorway pressed her hand flat against the wall, as if she needed something solid to hold on to. That was 20 years ago, Connie said. You don't understand what it was like for me. I was young. I had no money. And you can't just walk in here after 20 years and do this to our family. I was 10. The room held its breath. 3 words, and the air pressure changed. And 200 people stood perfectly still. Gary Pruitt, I said. Your boyfriend at the time. Scott's brother. He was 31 years old. I was 10. And you threw me out of the house for telling the truth. Scott's face went white. The name. His brother's name. He turned to Connie slowly, the way a man turns when he is hearing something he will spend the rest of his life unable to unhear. What is she talking about, Connie? Connie opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. There was no answer that worked in this room, in front of these people, with a granddaughter holding a locket, and a daughter holding a government file, and a husband asking a question he should have asked 13 years ago. I closed the file, placed the pages back in the envelope. I had not raised my voice. I had not cried. I had not performed grief, or rage, or vindication. I had read a record. That was what I was trained to do. And it was what the 10-year-old version of me did, in a school office, in 2006, when she told Mrs. Givens the truth, and trusted someone else to act on it. I walked to the front table near the entryway where the guest book sat next to a vase of white hydrangeas and a basket of party favors wrapped in cellophane. I reached into my work bag and pulled out the cashier's check. $250,000. I set it flat on the table beside the guest book. I'm not for sale, I said, quiet enough that only the nearest people heard. I never was. I walked toward the front door. Alexis followed. Behind us, the room was still holding its breath. Or maybe it had started breathing again, and I simply could not hear it over the sound of my own shoes on the hardwood. Scott caught us on the porch. He had come through the side door, avoiding the living room, keeping 200 people from watching him follow us out. His face was gray. His hands were shaking in a way that reminded me of my own hands in the Walgreens parking lot 2 days ago. "Is it true?" he said. "The CPS file is dated September 14th, 2006, I said. "Guilford County. You can request a copy." She never told me. His voice broke on the word told, split it into 2 syllables. 13 years. And she never once. I know. I looked at Scott Pruitt standing on his own porch at the 30th anniversary party for his own company. And I saw something I had not expected to see. Another person standing inside a lie Connie had built. The scale was different. The damage was different. But the architecture was the same. Choose the comfortable story. Never verify, never ask, and call it love. "What happens now?" Scott asked. "My lawyer is filing a criminal referral with the DA's office on Monday morning. For Gary. Not for you." He nodded once, the way people nod when they are not really agreeing but just acknowledging that something has been said that cannot be taken back. He did not go inside. He sat down on his own porch steps with his back to the front door, and the party continuing behind him without him, and he put his head in his hands. Highway 85 North. Windows down. The air was warm and smelled like asphalt and cut grass and the last heat of a June evening giving way to something cooler. Alexis had her feet on the dashboard and her hair blowing across her face, and the locket caught the highway lights in small, bright pulses. My work bag was on the back seat, lighter by 1 cashier's check, and the manila envelope was visible through the half-open zipper. My phone lit up on the center console. Connie's number. I let it ring. Then a text. "How could you do this to me?" I read it at a stoplight at the bottom of the off-ramp, and I did not respond. And the light turned green, and I drove. "Are you okay?" Alexis asked. "I don't know yet. That's honest. It's what I've got." She was quiet for a while. The highway stretched out straight ahead of us, the lanes almost empty in that particular Saturday evening stillness between the afternoon traffic and the late-night trucks. "My parents are going to want to meet you," she said. I drove for a long time before I answered. I'd like that. I passed the exit for my apartment complex. The sign for Elm Street glowed green and white in the headlights, and then fell behind us. And I kept driving because I was not ready to go home to 1 bedroom and 1 succulent and a quilt on an empty couch. Alexis did not ask where we were going. She reached over and turned up the radio. A song I had never heard. Something with a guitar and a voice that climbed into a register that did not quite work but did not need to. She sang along, slightly off-key, the way Carol sang hymns in the kitchen while the dishes dried. The woman in the custody hearing on Tuesday came back to me on the highway. The mother on the stand who said please and whose voice cracked on the word, and my fingers catching every syllable on the stenotype machine. I had recorded that woman's words the way I recorded everyone's words, accurately and completely, because my job was to capture what was said so that it could not be unsaid or undone or denied. That was what I had done tonight. Connie spent 20 years trying to unsay what happened, trying to undo it with silence, and then with money. And tonight, in front of 200 witnesses, the record was read. The facts as they were documented in 2006 by a social worker named Linda Farrow, in handwriting that slanted slightly to the right. The girl who sat in that county office and told Linda Farrow the truth was braver than anyone gave her credit for. She was 10 years old and she had no money and no power and no allies and no plan. She just had a sentence. "I told my teacher because I didn't know who else to tell." And that sentence saved a life. It saved the life of a baby who became a girl named Alexis Tate, who grew up in Raleigh with a bookshelf shaped like a tree, and parents who loved her from day one, and a voice that could ask a question on an apartment floor that changed everything. So why does the 30-year-old version of you need her mother's permission to be whole? I was not healed. I might not be healed for a long time, or ever, or in the way that word usually means. But I was no longer waiting. The permission I had been asking for was permission I had already given myself at 10 years old in a school office. And the only thing the 30-year-old version of me needed to do was stop forgetting that. "Where are we going?" Alexis asked. "I don't know." "Are you hungry?" "Starving." There's a place off the next exit. It's nothing special. That sounds perfect. I took the exit. The highway lights slid past the windows and disappeared behind us one by one. My daughter was in the passenger seat, singing a song I would learn the words to by next week. The manila envelope was in the back. The check was on a table in Connie Pruitt's house, uncashed, unspent, sitting next to a guest book that 2 honey people had signed on the night they learned that the story they had been told for 20 years was a lie. I was driving north with my daughter, and I was not for sale.